not a man. I am dynamite." Friedrich Nietzsche wrote these words shortly before he lost his mind. He wasn't bragging. He was warning us. He knew that his thoughts were dangerous enough to tear the roof off the 20th century, and he was right. But the man who called himself Dynamite was physically a wreck. He was a polite, quiet, mustache-wearing professor who suffered from agonizing health problems. He had migraines that lasted for days, vomiting spells, terrible eyesight, and stomach cramps. He spent half his life in a dark room with the curtains drawn, pressing a cold cloth to his head, writing his explosive philosophy in 20-minute bursts between spasms of pain. Born in 1844 in Prussia, Nietzsche was the son of a Lutheran pastor. His father died of softening of the brain, likely a brain tumor or stroke, when Friedrich was only 4. The shadow of his father's madness hung over him like a sword. He was terrified that he would inherit the insanity. He was a prodigy. At 24, he became the youngest professor of classical philology at the University of Basel. He was brilliant, but he was bored. Didn't want to study dusty old Greek texts. He wanted to understand why we are alive. In 1872, he published The Birth of Tragedy and immediately destroyed his academic career. The book was too wild, too artistic. The dusty professors hated it. Nietzsche didn't care. He resigned from the university due to his failing health and began a life as a wandering ghost. He traveled between Switzerland, Italy, and France, looking for a climate that wouldn't hurt his head. He lived in cheap boarding houses, eating simple meals, taking long walks in the mountains. He was the loneliest man in Europe. It was during these lonely walks that he dropped the bomb that would define him. In The Gay Science, 1882, he wrote the most famous sentence in philosophy: "God is dead. God remains dead. We have killed him." Most people interpret this as a celebration. I think Nietzsche was an atheist dancing on the grave of religion. They are wrong. Nietzsche wasn't celebrating. He was terrified. He realized that for thousands of years, Christianity had been the foundation of Western morality. It told us what was good and what was evil. It gave life meaning. But science, Darwin, and rationality had killed that belief. Nietzsche looked into the future and saw a void. He saw that without God, humans would fall into nihilism, the belief that nothing matters. He predicted that the 20th century would be a bloodbath of ideologies trying to replace God: communism, fascism, nationalism, chaos. He warned, "How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers?" He wasn't trying to destroy the world. He was trying to save it. He wanted to find a way to say yes to life without needing a heaven afterlife. He wanted us to find meaning right here, in the dirt and the pain. But the world wasn't listening. His books sold almost 0 copies. He had to pay to print them himself. And the void was about to scream back in the form of a woman. In 1882, Nietzsche met Lou Salomé. She was 21, Russian, brilliant, and free-spirited. She was arguably the most intellectual woman in Europe. Nietzsche fell in love instantly. He believed he had finally found the one person who could understand his mind. He called her the smartest person I ever knew. But Lou Salomé was not interested in marriage. She wanted a trinity of intellectual friendship. She proposed living together with Nietzsche and another philosopher, Paul Ricoeur, in a sexless commune of minds. Nietzsche agreed, but he was tormented by jealousy. Proposed marriage to her 3 times. She rejected him 3 times. Then came the photo. The most infamous photograph in philosophy. Nietzsche, Paul Ricoeur, and Lou Salomé went to a studio in Lucerne. In the photo, the 2 men are standing in front of a cart acting like horses. Lou Salomé is kneeling in the cart holding a small whip. It was meant to be a joke. But for Nietzsche, it became a prophecy of his humiliation. The relationship collapsed. Lou ran off with Paul Ricoeur. Nietzsche was left shattered. He felt betrayed, emasculated, and utterly alone. He retreated to the Swiss Alps, to Sils Maria. He was suicidal. He took massive doses of opium and chloral hydrate to sleep. But in this pit of despair, something snapped. The pain transformed into power. In a frenzy of inspiration, he wrote, "Thus Spoke Zarathustra." It is a strange, biblical-sounding book about a prophet who comes down from the mountain to teach humanity a new way to live. This is where he introduced the Bermensch, the Overman, or Superman. The Bermensch is not a Nazi stormtrooper. We will get to that lie later. The Bermensch is a person who has overcome their own nature. It is someone who creates their own values. Someone who looks at the chaotic, meaningless universe and says, "I love it." He introduced the concept of a more faughty love of fate. Imagine a demon comes to you tonight and says, "This life as you now live it and have lived it. You will have to live once more, and innumerable times more. Every pain, every joy, every boredom, every embarrassment repeated exactly the same, forever. Would you throw yourself down and gnash your teeth? Or would you say, 'You are a god, and I have never heard anything more divine'? If you can love your life enough to want to repeat it forever, even the bad parts, then you have one. That is the goal of the Bermensch." Nietzsche was writing to save himself. He was a sick, lonely, heartbroken man trying to convince himself that his suffering was beautiful. He was trying to turn his pain into gold, but his brain was a ticking time bomb. The syphilis he had likely contracted in a brothel as a student, or perhaps genetically inherited, was slowly eating away at his nervous system. He became more aggressive in his writing. He wrote Beyond Good and Evil, the Antichrist, Twilight of the Idols. He called himself the Antichrist. He attacked Christianity as a slave morality that made people weak. He attacked German culture. He attacked alcohol. He attacked everyone. He was writing faster and faster. January 3rd, 1889. Turin, Italy. Nietzsche is walking out of his apartment. In the Piazza Carlo Alberto, he sees a cab driver beating his horse. The horse is exhausted, refusing to move. The driver is whipping it mercilessly. Nietzsche, the man who wrote that we must be hard, that pity is a weakness, that we must be supermen, does something unexpected. He runs into the street. He throws his arms around the horse's neck to protect it. He weeps uncontrollably, collapses to the ground, holding the animal, sobbing. It was the final break. The great philosopher's mind had snapped. His landlord found him and brought him back to his room. For the next few days, Nietzsche danced naked in his room, singing loud songs and writing insane letters to the kings of Europe. He wrote to the Pope. He wrote to the King of Italy, "I will have the Pope put in chains, ... I am God." His friend Franz Overbeck rushed to Turin and found him in a state of ruin. Nietzsche was taken back to Basel and placed in an asylum. He was 44 years old. The diagnosis was general paresis of the insane, tertiary syphilis. Though modern doctors suspect it might have been CADASIL syndrome or a brain tumor. For the next 10 years, Friedrich Nietzsche was a vegetable. He sat in a chair, staring at the wall. He couldn't write, he could barely speak. Occasionally he would mutter, "Ich bin dumm, mother. I am stupid." The man who had the greatest command of the German language since Goethe was now reduced to silence. And this is where the second tragedy begins, the tragedy of the sister. Elisabeth Farster Nietzsche was Friedrich's younger sister. She was an anti-Semite and a German nationalist, everything Friedrich hated. He had despised her views his whole life. He called her a vengeful anti-Semitic goose. But now, Friedrich was helpless. Elisabeth took control of him. She moved him to her house in Weimar. She dressed him in white robes and put him on display like a museum exhibit. She invited people to come and look at the mad philosopher. She made money off his corpse while he was still breathing. Worse, she took control of his unpublished manuscripts. She cut them up, rearranged them, and forged passages to make it look like Nietzsche supported her anti-Semitic nationalist views. She published a book called The Will to Power, a book Nietzsche never finished, turned it into a manifesto for German dominance. Nietzsche died on August 25, 1900. He was spared the horror of seeing what his sister did next. In the 1930s, Elisabeth became a supporter of Adolf Hitler. When Hitler visited the Nietzsche archive, she gave him her brother's walking stick. Hitler posed for photos next to the bust of Nietzsche. The Nazis hijacked Nietzsche's philosophy. They twisted the Bermensch, a spiritual conqueror, into the Aryan master race, a biological conqueror. They used the words of the man who hated anti-Semites to justify the Holocaust. It was the ultimate betrayal. If Nietzsche had been alive, he would have been the first to attack the Nazis. He loathed herd mentality. He loathed nationalism. He loathed the state. It took 50 years for scholars to clear his name. Walter Kaufmann and others went back to the original manuscripts and revealed Elisabeth's forgeries. They showed the world the real Nietzsche, the poet, the individualist, the lover of life. Today we know the truth. Nietzsche wasn't a monster. He was a doctor trying to cure a sick culture. He told us that God is dead not to make us depressed,